which is the National Alliance for Mental Illness. She is walking to help bring awareness to this important issue. I'd like to welcome up Sam Seitz.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests. On October 18th, I am walking for NAMI, and I invite you to join me. I have a very good friend named Dolly. She's 88 years old, and she is walking for the 10th time. She has 7 children, and one of them was diagnosed with schizophrenia. He's now 50, and he's holding down a job, and she's delighted. Very unusual for this age. I'm walking for 3 reasons. 1, for my older sister Patty, may she rest in peace, and my first husband John. 2, to overcome the fear of the stigma. And 3, to give back, to bring awareness, so we can counter the apathy so that solutions may emerge. My older sister Patty was a beautiful child. She looked like Shirley Temple, and she grew up to be a beautiful woman. Although as she got older, she did seem to have some behavioral changes, like she became somewhat self-absorbed. She'd make mountains out of molehills, and she was hard to be around sometimes. Meanwhile, I went and married my first husband, John, who was a very smart man. He graduated from New Mexico Institute of Technology with one of the first degrees in computer science. He went on to be a systems analyst at the local bank, where he was put on a project to build one of the first databases for MasterCard. And when he did this, he claims he discovered some creative bookkeeping by some of the executives, and they were dipping into the funds. Well, he tried to report it. And when he did, he'd come home and tell me somebody followed him home. And then the next night it would be a few more cars, until it got up to be about 7 cars. He had me whispering in my own house because he told me the house was bugged. It didn't come to a head until he decided to take a bottle of aspirins, which he knew wouldn't take his life, but he was hospitalized and he did get psychiatric help. Meanwhile, I was working a full-time job, and even putting in overtime, and we were 40 miles outside of town. I used to come home 7, 8 o'clock at night, and he'd be sleeping. He wouldn't get up until I was ready to go to bed, and he did this for quite a while, till finally he said to me, "I want you out of my life." The psychiatrist, he told me he was just going to bring me down. So I decided to move on. Meanwhile, my sister Patty, she was doing great. She had a job at a bank. She went on to start her own skincare business, and it was very successful. She even hired my one sister. But she said the IRS was after her. She couldn't get over the stress. It just stressed her out so bad she had to stop her business. We all just thought, she's making a mountain out of a molehill. Well, she went on and got married to a nice man, and they lived in Alabama. And here I was in Phoenix, a single mom, when all of a sudden I heard a knock on the door. It was my sister Patty. She told me the TV told her to fly to LA, somebody was going to give her $1 million and make her a star. And when that didn't happen, she came to my house. That's when I realized Patty had a serious problem. It still took us quite a while to help her get help, but when I did try to get her help, I became the enemy. You can't reason with people with a schizophrenic. Well, she didn't have a very pleasant life even after that. And she died at the age of 62 all alone. We don't know much about schizophrenia. We do know that it's developmental, the cause. And as a schizophrenic gets older, their emotional thinking and their logical thinking is disconnected. They live in a state of confusion. They are more tormented than a person that's been given a diagnosis of a terminal illness. They can handle that more than a schizophrenic can handle daily life. So what happens to these schizophrenics? Most are not diagnosed till they're well into adulthood, and often they have jobs already. But when the confusion hits, they tend to lose their jobs and find themselves out on the streets. If they're at home with their family, the family lives in denial for most of the time. When they finally do realize that their loved one has a problem, they try to help. They again become the enemy. The schizophrenic becomes afraid. And this is contagious. The family becomes afraid. They're afraid for their loved one and of their loved one, and they're afraid for their own mental stability. There's a lot of tension in the house, and nobody wants to talk about it. So whose problem is it? Is it the schizophrenic? Yes, because they're an adult. Is it the family? Yes, because it impacts them. What about the community? Right now, there's no housing in the state of Arizona for severely mentally ill people. If they're housed, it's because they're incarcerated from a crime. They claim that only 20% of the inmates are mentally ill, yet NAMI claims that 1 in 4 adults are mentally ill. 1 in 4 adults. 1 in 10 have schizophrenia. Whose problem is it? I say it's the communities as well. We don't want to have to deal with the repercussions. So I implore you to walk with me on October 18th to help bring awareness. Registration starts at 8:30 at the state capitol.